Hi, my name's Phil. I like talking about politics. And after Trump tried to claim a comprehensive trade deal with the UK, which is in reality just a tariff reduction deal, in order to persuade Americans that his tariffs are working, his Treasury Secretary is part of a delegation meeting Chinese officials in Switzerland this weekend. Ahead of the meeting, Trump has already been talking about reducing tariffs on Chinese imports without mentioning what he aims to get in return, other than a similar reduction from China. So are we just going to see another climb down from Trump here? But first, for daily news and commentary, please hit the subscribe button to stay notified. So what has Captain Climb Down been up to this weekend? Well, climbing down by the sounds of it. Although there might be an undertone of ridicule here, I do hope that what's happening this weekend is Trump dialing down the trade war with China, because that will also suggest he recognises boundaries. Trump posted on Truth Social, the other day before, that he felt 80% was a good number. Just to remind you, at the moment, that baseline tariff on Chinese imports is 145%. But he also said it was over to Scott Bessent, his Treasury Secretary, which was interesting phrasing. He didn't say, oh yeah, 80% sounds good, we'll have to see how the talks go. No, he named his Secretary of State as being the one responsible. Is this setting Trump up for throwing Bessent under the bus later if too many see through the obvious climb down? I've seen suggestions that Trump may be saying 80% as well as some sort of clumsy negotiating position and will actually be eyeing 60%. But the numbers won't really matter in terms of what comes out of this. What matters is what is agreed. Trump ramped up the tariffs against China. He did that. He chose to do that. China really just responded by matching them. Now, China has also applied a few other measures. They have restricted quite frankly, blocked some imports of agri-food products, as well as restricted exports of critical minerals. What will matter is, will the USA just walk back on their trade barriers in return for equivalent reductions from China, which China only applied in response anyway? Because if that's the case, this will just be a climb down from Trump. The only way Trump will be able to claim a win is if he gets some access to the Chinese market, which he didn't have before. Even then, it would still be a matter of the overall balance, but that is the bare minimum to have any credible way of saying his policies have worked. I saw someone remarking on this weekend meeting with China and saying that Trump was essentially negotiating with himself now. And although I think it was probably meant as a facetious comment, it's also probably correct. Trump is effectively negotiating with himself. I've said a few times before, China spent a decade preparing for this. Yes, the trade war hurts them, of course. But they spent years making sure it wouldn't hurt as much as it hurts America. They made sure that they would not be the underdog in this. They've been able to match the tariffs. They've been able to apply laser-targeted non-tariff responses as well. They've severely restricted imports of food from the farms in America, most aligned with MAGA beliefs. They've also restricted their own exports of critical minerals, which American companies desperately need. China goes into this meeting wanting the trade war scaled back, but as far as I can tell from economic commentary, not needing to give an inch more than America does. Trump is not going to come away with this with anything he didn't have when he took over in January, as far as I can tell. It sounds like it's going to be a very elaborate way of him admitting he went a little bit too far. A bit like that, reminds me of that part in George Orwell's 1984, where the Ministry of Plenty reduces chocolate rations from 30 grams to 20 grams, but then the next day, the ministry claims they've just raised chocolate rations to 20 grams. And loads of people fell for it because they're all hooked into the propaganda and they hail it as a big win. Trump is basically going to attempt something similar, isn't he? Watch this. After China effectively blocked over $1.5 billion worth of American beef, just as one example, Trump will cut a deal with China. Maybe it'll be this weekend. Maybe this weekend will just be the start of it. Maybe it'll be later on. But at some point, right, he'll cut a deal with China where China agrees to import American beef again. And Trump will claim he's boosted the American beef sector by $1.5 billion. I bet you my right buttock this is what he does. He's already said he's happy with tariffs dropping from 145% to 80%, and some think he actually intends to go further. China will probably be more than happy just to reduce their own line. They've only been matching those American tariffs anyway. They may even agree to ease some of their own non-tariff measures as well, because China can go back to their own public. The Chinese officials can go back to their own public and say America have backed down. Trump will tell the American public that China have backed down, but who will be correct? For Xi Jinping to be right, all that has to happen is that some of the trade barriers which Trump raised, and China only raised in response, have to be lowered. For Trump to be correct, he would have to get China to agree to some market access that they weren't willing to concede a few months ago. I know where my money is, or my right buttock is in this case. But beyond the propaganda battle, what will this mean for Trump's approach in future? Assuming there's an agreement to calm down with China this weekend, which is not certain, it will demonstrate that Trump realises some boundaries and that he went too far. But we also know that he still wants to pursue his tariff policy for tax-raising purposes from other events this week. So he's not going to look for a face-saving way to drop the whole idea. He still believes in the principle of it. What he's doing is trying to find a face-saving way to get the balance right between charging foreigners to pay for American spending, as he describes it, even though it's Americans paying those import tariffs, as the inflation figures will show before long, and avoiding complete economic collapse of the country. After all, Peter Navarro is still allowed to represent him. Until Trump sacks him, Trump is still clearly pressing ahead with some aspect of these tariffs. But at least he's not doubling down on the extreme levels of crazy. So whatever damage is being done, I suppose you could say not as bad as might otherwise have been the case. And that is always the best case scenario when a country elects someone clearly wholly unsuitable for office, that the earth will not be a smoking ruin by the time they leave office. Not that this outcome has yet been averted when you glance through the international news. Finally, I must just mention a final moral of the story. You know, like they used to do at the end of 1980s cartoons in America, that clearly the American public learned nothing from. See, someone collected together a couple of tweets from a Trump voter. In the first, they said they were voting for Trump for their business and to own the libs. In the more recent one, it was to announce that they think their business is going to have to close because of Trump's tariffs and that they don't understand what's happened. Why are the leopards eating my face? I didn't vote for that. I've said it before, I'll say it again. Don't vote for someone who is explicitly promising to shit on other people. Politicians shit on people all the time, but don't vote for the one who promises to do it as their main appeal. It never works out well. And that is because you are way closer to the target of your hate than the person you're supporting. So you are going to get hit by that shit bomb as well. Where you have a choice, vote for someone who wants to bring people together, not drive them apart. This person presumably didn't like Kamala Harris or her policies, but if she were president, their business would be doing fine. But their vote got them exactly what they wanted. Now their business is in trouble and the Libs have just won elections in Canada, Australia, and even Rome. Enjoy the consequences of your actions. But there we are. Those are my thoughts. Let me know yours in the comments below. If you've enjoyed the video, please click the like button and subscribe for further content. If you'd like to support the channel further, you can click the join button for memberships. Thanks for watching, and until next time, I'll see you later.